It's Tuesday, the 21st of December, and you're watching Euronews now. Let's take a look at the latest headlines. Omicron fears spread. The World Health Organization urges people to cancel Christmas events and celebrate later. Prisons for rent. After struggling with overcrowding in its cells, Denmark pays Albania 20 million euros to relocate its inmates. And as Turkey, Iran and Russia begin another effort for peace in Syria, we'll talk to an expert about Europe's role in finding a solution.
Millions across Europe are hoping for a festive time this weekend with family and friends, but for the second year running, this could be in doubt. The World Health Organization is recommending cancelling events over the holiday period in the light of growing cases of the Omicron variant of coronavirus worldwide. It's a message few want to hear.
All of us are sick of this pandemic. All of us want to spend time with friends and family. But an event cancelled is better than a life cancelled. It's better to cancel now and celebrate later than to celebrate now and grieve later. None of us want to be here again in 12 months' time.
But for most governments, the focus is on booster campaigns or considering possible lockdowns. The Netherlands is already in one of those. Switzerland has announced tight new COVID measures from December the 20th, including making working from home mandatory for all those who can.
To be honest, I find it a bit difficult with the topic of vaccination. Now you're vaccinated and have the feeling that it's good, but somehow you notice that it still doesn't help that much.
In Germany, federal and state governments are considering contact restrictions after Christmas, even for the vaccinated and recovering individuals.
For example, you can reduce the size of groups. In Bavaria, they have already closed bars and clubs for the upcoming days and weeks to avoid hotspots and super spreading events.
Meanwhile, Germany's new Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, says the country will reach its target of offering booster shots to at least 30 million citizens by the end of the year.
The jury has begun its deliberations in Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking trial in New York. In its closing statements, the prosecution argued that Maxwell was the key to the whole of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's operation. The defence insists Maxwell is being made a scapegoat for the crimes of the late Epstein, who killed himself in prison. A verdict is expected before Christmas.
U.S. prosecutors called Ghislaine Maxwell a sophisticated predator in their closing arguments in the sex trafficking trial of the British socialite on Monday. 59-year-old Maxwell denies grooming underage girls to be sexually abused by financier Jeffrey Epstein. She could face up to 80 years behind bars if convicted of sex trafficking and perjury charges. Her defense attorneys continued to say that she is being made a scapegoat for crimes committed by Jeffrey Epstein. The stage is now set for jury deliberation, and the jury could determine Ghislaine Maxwell's fate by Christmas Day, which is also her 60th birthday. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for Euronews.
Kosovo has reached a deal to rent 300 of its jail cells to Denmark, in an unusual move that will cost Copenhagen an annual fee of 20 million euros. Authorities say this is to ease overcrowding in the Scandinavian country's prison system, as jail population has had a 20% jump. Inmates sent to Kosovo will be foreigners, subject to deportation after serving their sentences.
The intention is that the prisoners that will serve their sentence here in Kosovo will be prisoners that are expelled from Denmark by the court of law, and there will be, of course, a talk about which prisoners this will entail. But we have already talked about that there will be transfers, no that are convicted to terror, no that are convicted to war crimes.
Non-profit organizations monitoring the correctional system in Kosovo have said other prisons will naturally be overpopulated in order to make way for the incoming prisoners.
Delegates from Turkey, Russia and Iran have begun the 17th round of Syrian peace talks in Kazakhstan. Joining them are representatives from the United Nations and other observers. For more on the Astana peace talks, I'm now joined by Chris Doyle from London, who is the director for the Council for British-Arab Understanding. Chris, thank you for joining us here at Euronews. It's been over a decade since the Syrian war began. The Astana peace process was launched almost 5 years ago to find a permanent solution. What have they achieved?
Well, the Astana process is really the gathering of the three major powers that dominate, the external powers that dominate the situation on the ground: Russia, Iran and Turkey. And they are not really talks in a sense between two sides. It's about those particular powers and how they manage a situation in Syria where you see a country that is now fragmented into different areas.
Are the talks likely to be able to work with Europe to achieve peace in Syria?
The European Union is really a side player, a side actor in all of this. It is very short-sighted because what happens in Syria doesn't stay in Syria, and we've seen that in two major ways. Firstly, with the number of refugees. Just to remind you that over 13 million Syrians have been displaced in this conflict. Many of those refugees, of course, the majority went to neighboring countries, but they've gone into Europe as well. The second thing is the spread of really dangerous extremism, which has blighted the streets of Europe, where extremist groups, Al-Qaeda, ISIS or Daesh, have been able to use the conflict as a place to train, to fund, and to send their guys into Europe to carry out atrocities. So if we don't find a way to improve the situation in Syria, we will see both of those processes strengthening, more refugees and more extremism.
The Carthaginian general Hannibal famously used the route for a surprise attack on the Roman legions. But now migrants travelling up through Italy are crossing the Alps to make it into France. With less border checks, the route attracts those looking to evade the authorities and move freely. However, the mountain pass offers its own challenges. In a desperate attempt for a better life, the migrants are risking life and limb on their journey.
We were frozen. We couldn't feel our fingers. We couldn't feel anything. It was very, very cold. We even thought that we would like the police to come and take us to the station, so we wouldn't be cold.
Some volunteers have taken it upon themselves to help these weary travellers survive the dangerous peaks.
Why are we doing this? Because sailors never leave a person to die at sea. A mountaineer will never leave a person to die in a mountain. Now there are people who are trying to cross who are in difficulties, and they don't know the mountains, and they put themselves in danger without knowing. So people that know this area will go to the mountains to meet them and help them.
Unlike the Mediterranean crossing that has claimed countless lives, the route has been spared much tragedy thanks to the volunteers who provide the migrants life-saving shelter.
Thousands of people filled the center of Buenos Aires on day 2 of rallies, marking the 20th anniversary of Argentina's so-called Great Crisis. 39 people were killed in a government crackdown during protests over economic meltdown. It led to the resignation of the then President Fernando de la Rúa, who fled the country.